Fans, welcome to this week's Wrestletalk. We're going to continue to talk about the decline of wrestling on the national level. But I'm going to start off. Luke and I got together and watched Raw this week.
Indeed, we watched Raw. It was Raw Roulette.
Not as bad as I thought.
It was actually, they had a lot of wrestling matches this week, which is unusual for them lately.
They had about 40 minutes worth.
There was not a lot of pushing for the next pay-per-view.
Yeah, that's what was weird about this one. I mean, like we talked about,
they did
it's
mention
a pay-per-view
it
builder.
once. They did mention it once by name. The Money in the Bank pay-per-view.
And of course, there were commercials for it, but not
right
whole segments of the show devoted.
Which I think is weird is that Money in the Bank gets its own pay-per-view. It was just kind of an add-on.
It was just a match at WrestleMania.
It actually was generally the best match at WrestleMania a lot of years.
So, and apparently some people have won it and immediately cashed it in. So they immediately, after the ladder match, have a title match.
Yeah, I seem to recall maybe Edge winning a title once that way.
Or Edge.
Kane
Edge
did,
did.
right.
I think Kane did. Not sure. The Miz won the title by holding on to Money in the Bank, waited on I believe it was Cena to finish a grueling match and then cashed it in.
Right.
But yeah, Money in the Bank gets its own pay-per-view now. Like I said, I guess they have a half Raw, half SmackDown branded one.
How is it going to be formatted? Is it going to be several matches, or is it going to be like a giant battle royal type? As if they did at WrestleMania with the Money in the Bank?
It is going to be 6 people at least, maybe 8.
Right, and it'll be normally I would say it'll be equal SmackDown and Raw representative.
Right.
And the one that wins it can use it for their
I just will assume that they're going to have other matches at the Money in the Bank.
Right, like
so.
well, Cena and CM Punk.
They're usually pretty terrible anyway.
Cena and CM Punk are one match. Now we'll get CM Punk in a minute. And I think Randy Orton and Christian is a match. So
Well, I hope she can win. She is our friend.
she is.
I don't think it's that one.
Oh.
It's the Canadian one.
Awful.
Well, that's all a boot.
I don't know.
Now, we've been talking about how wrestlers can't really hold their own on the microphone anymore. But I got to say this: if you watched Raw this weekend, this Monday,
The end of
Raw, the CM Punk promo, and you had to sit and wonder, is this real? Raise your hand. Or if you had your hand up, CM Punk did what a wrestler's supposed to do.
That's right.
He got on the microphone. He captured your attention. He made you suspend your disbelief.
Even if it was just a couple minutes.
And they're going with the whole angle with him. He's suspended over this. This was poorly thought out by somebody. Because you know what they did after Raw? They take this week's Raw. Because the Raw brand is on tour in Australia right now. So Vince McMahon's going to come out next week and talk about how Punk is suspended. And Cena's going to come out and talk about how Punk needs to be reinstated by the pay-per-view. But, right now Punk's whole deal is he's going to win the belt at the pay-per-view and he's leaving because his contract's about to expire.
Right.
There's no way they're not going to re-sign CM. Actually, they've already re-signed CM Punk.
And too, I mean, let's look at people in the past who didn't re-sign their contract until the last minute and had a belt. Let's see, Bret Hart, Montreal Screwjob.
That's what I expect to see happen at this pay-per-view. Is a rehash of the Montreal Screwjob.
Okay, they're not going to let him take the belt onto another promotion.
No, the last person that did that was a lady by the name of Medusa Michelli on Nitro. Showed up with the women's title and dropped it in the garbage.
Right.
In her defense, and everyone else's defense, that's about the state of women's wrestling, especially at the time.
Okay. Another thing that kind of gave it away for me and Patrick during his rant was when he was talking about people he could go wrestle for, he did not mention TNA.
Mentioned Ring of Honor, who's got good stuff, but a bit player.
Right. He mentioned the Japanese wrestling. And see, here's the thing. The only other true competitor on that competition, on that level, is TNA. And he did not mention TNA.
Well, you know it's a sell. If it makes it on TV, it's a sell.
Well, that too. Oh, that's true.
Because they're live, but they're on the your delay.
The fact that they would show the entire thing, that's the biggest. They're not.
I mean, they did at the end cut the mic.
But after he'd already said stuff.
After he ranted for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, you're not. You're not going to see anything that's not been planned.
Right. They will. If one of them started to do that, they would have cut the mic, and that you would have
gone to commercial.
They would have went to commercial. They would have went. Well, they cut the mic so he couldn't talk to the people in the arena there.
Right.
They would have went to commercial. They would have went backstage, and an army of people would have tackled them on the stage. We wouldn't have got to see it on TV.
That camera feed would have been cut.
Yeah.
There would have been no more camera feed at that point. You're not going to see anything that Vince doesn't want you to see. And apparently the one thing that Vince doesn't want you to see anymore...
Wrestling.
This
is crazy.
Or the word wrestling. It is no longer World Wrestling Entertainment. Vince has dropped wrestling from their vernacular. The announcers are not allowed to call the wrestlers anymore. They are superstars and they're divas. They're athletes. No longer wrestlers. Vince says he wants to go away from wrestling. He doesn't want that name or word associated with the WWE anymore.
It doesn't make any sense.
No.
And then the other thing, at the same time, he's wanting to start his own cable channel where he shows old wrestling footage.
They've already got the on-demand service, but I guess he figures he can make more money just putting it out there and selling commercials.
He probably could.
Because honestly, I've thought about buying WWE on demand. I've been close. I just can't bring myself to spend $10 a month when I can go to YouTube and watch most of it for free.
Right. I mean, how contradictory can you be by saying you want to take wrestling out of the current stuff, but I want you to watch all the old stuff as I can get you to watch?
Because that's how much it's changed. Wrestling used to actually be wrestling. That was the main event used to be in the ring.
Right.
The main event's out of the ring now. That's why.
Well, yeah, the main event of Raw was Punk on stage talking.
So as we've spoken about, that's why wrestling on 3-hour programs is 45 minutes of in ring and an hour and a half out of the ring. It's no longer wrestling.
In fact, this week, TNA, who was under limited commercial interruption, 5-hour energy, did it where they could have limited commercials in 2 hours. They only had 29 minutes of wrestling.
That's worse than they did the week before without the limited interruption. They just used that extra time apparently to put more bits in.
Not sure about. I didn't look at how much wrestling was on SmackDown this week, but in kind of a big shock to me. One thing I did read about SmackDown this week is there was a Christian Sin Cara match that Christian, from what I understand, kind of dominated. I thought they were bringing in Sin Cara for this big push.
I think they've honestly just brought him in to replace Rey Mysterio eventually. Mysterio's getting up there in age and not quite as athletic as he used to be. He still puts on a pretty good match, but I think that was hopefully their plan for Sin Cara. Sometimes they'll push Rey, sometimes they won't, but Rey's popular no matter what they do.
Right.
And,
go ahead. On Raw, there was the Sin Cara and Evan Bourne match. Now that was a good match. That was an actual wrestling match.
And it's proof to me that the cruiserweights are still a viable product.
Yes.
That's the thing that Monday Nitro and Eric Bischoff did as well as anybody, is they really knew how to push the cruiserweights.
Right. good job.
I mean, you go down south, and by that I mean of the border. If you can get a feed where you're watching AAA out of Mexico, or if you're lucky enough to get some Japanese wrestling, just watch some of these lighter weight guys. I mean, they do amazing stuff. Remember the first episode of Nitro was Brian Pillman versus Jushin Thunder Liger. That match was amazing. In fact, it's on the Best of Nitro DVD. It's actually been the best actual match so far.
Now, on Raw, there was a scene where they were actually pushing both their new DVDs, the best of Nitro, and the cage match DVD that just came out.
Which I bought, I've not watched yet, but it looks like it's got some amazing matches on it, including Abdullah the Butcher versus Bruiser Brody.
It started out, it was Diamond Dallas Page and Booker T. And they were talking, and another guy who I don't know, I didn't know him. Patrick, do you know who that was?
I don't remember.
Anyway, he came out and started the smack talk about how those two are old and all this. I would like to see. I was hoping we'd get to see some Diamond Dallas Page and Booker T in the ring. They kind of hinted they were going to do it, and they didn't do it.
Boy, Shawn Michaels teased coming out of retirement too.
Boy, didn't he? The Shawn Michaels thing was pretty cool.
But now Shawn Michaels has a hunting show.
He does. That's why he was on Raw, was to push his. Despite saying, as he was saying, yeah, I dislike people who come out and just push their other show, which is, then his little thing came across, and he's like, and just push their Twitter, and then he's like, make sure my Twitter's on.
And it came across, yeah. I mean, but man, Shawn Michaels.
Just assume Vince is probably in the production phase of that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh,
Triple H is his first guest. So.
That's the whole point of Vince dropping wrestling. He's trying to make, these terrible movies and TV shows.
Let's face it, the Marine was pretty terrible.
See No Evil was pretty terrible.
Pretty much any WWE.
Man, me and Sean went and saw that. He thought it was like Shakespeare. Like that guy over there.
Man, why you gotta take a shot at him on wrestling too?
Because we missed that week on Sports Chat.
That's true. Well, should take more.
Man. But, I mean, seriously, they're trying to make some, okay, like, what's that terrible movie with the Big Show we saw at Walmart? Knucklehead. Where's
Knucklehead? Yeah, I think that's what it was.
That's your new. Wrestling has been dropped in favor of this stuff. TV shows. He says he wants to do other live productions because they're good at doing live production. I'm not sure what he's talking about. There's some kind of high demand for other types of live productions. I'm not sure.
Well, because he did such a great job with XFL.
Yeah.
And that bodybuilding thing he had there for
the World Bodybuilding Federation
was terrible.
I mean, okay, these things bond. Why? He's a wrestling promoter. He has been doing wrestling promotion since he was 5. Maybe even before.
It is the family business.
It's the family business. This is what you know, Vince. Why are you trying to screw it up? I don't understand. That's right, I'm talking directly to him.
I'm sure you're watching, Vince. Luke here, he will run the WWE for you.
I'll tell you what. In the next segment, I will tell you my story about when I applied for the WWE and what I was told. Because a few years ago, I actually applied for a job as a writer there. Back when SECW was in business.
Right.
It was actually... SECW was on its way out. It was after Luke. I was the only original left. Fans, I think we're about out of time for this segment. We'll be right back with the next segment, and I'll tell you...
No more questions!